Welcome back to Big Fish, Little Fish. Teo and I are here again. Just want to thank all of our followers, the all 30, 40 of you who listen consistently. Today, we're going to talk about quite a few interesting subjects. We're going to do a tax talk part 2 since it's tax season and people are so interested in taxes. We are not tax professionals, but we do have thoughts on taxes. We're going to talk a little founding fathers, a little bit of why someone would consider raising taxes to be good, and why lowering expenses may be a better option. Maybe it's not. We'd love you to comment and let us know what you think. And then to wrap it up, we're going to talk about how we would change certain things in the political system. Anyways, let's start off. Let's go on our first topic, Tale. Raise taxes, lower expenses. What are your thoughts? I have a few things I'd like to say too at some point, but yeah, how about you start us off right now?
So, first of all, episode 15. I think that's a big win, but I want to say congrats to you on that. That's big. Thank you, Eugene, for being here. Appreciate you.
Couldn't happen
without you. 15 episodes in. 1,000 to go.
Millions of views. On TikTok and IG and things. Tune in if you don't tune in.
But when we're talking about it, I think there was a way we wanted to frame it, which is it better to raise taxes or to lower expenses? And actually, I'm going to throw a curveball at you because I actually thought of a third one that I didn't initially include, right? So be prepared. Third option, to increase revenue. Okay? Uh-huh. Now keep that in the back of your mind. We'll talk about that a little later. But basically, initially, I was posing it as a two-part option. You can either, how are we going to do things in America? Are we going to raise the taxes so that the government's getting the money it needs to do the government projects and initiatives they're working on? Or do we have to cut expenses so that we aren't having as high of a cost and our taxes cover a bigger portion of the bill? But really, when I started doing some research, what I found out is I'm just going to say a few stats, and then I'll throw it over to you for opinion, and then I'll give some opinions myself. But few rapid-fire facts for you if you don't know about the U.S. national debt. Currently, as of the time of this recording, the U.S. has $34 trillion of outstanding federal debt. To put that in context, if you were to assign that money to all the Americans, each American would have to pay $102,000 collectively, every American, to be able to pay that debt off. I didn't do the math on it, but I found that stat online. One other piece of information that I think is important about the national debt is that if you didn't know, the national debt is rising quicker. So not only is it super high, but the pace of it increasing is quicker. And they're saying about every 100 days, we're getting another trillion, again with a T, $1 trillion of debt. So when you kind of extrapolate that out, that means every year we're adding about $3 trillion plus to our debt. So why does that matter? I think it's important to think about the U.S. government, and we have to think about the money that the U.S. government is using, right? So when you have national debt, there are things that happen, and you have to look at what your money is going towards, which is actually why you have the debt rising, right? So we've actually talked about this in another episode, but 5 of the biggest costs to the U.S. financial system are 1, Social Security, 2, healthcare, 3, national defense, 4, net interest on the debt, and 5, Medicare. Those are the 5 biggest costs to America right now, right? Well, ultimately, when you look at the amount of money America is spending and you look at the amount of money the America is getting from taxes, they don't equal. We're spending more than we're taxing our people. And I think we're at a point in time where people realize that can't go on for forever, even though we have $34 trillion, and I would have thought we would have addressed this before that point. But at some point, we got to figure out, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And there are 2 main schools of thought today in America as to how do we fix this $34 trillion problem. One, I think there's a group of people who are like, hey, we need to increase taxes on certain groups to be able to increase the income coming into the U.S. government to start paying for these projects and initiatives. There's other people who are like, hey, hold on a minute. why don't we cut expenses so we're not spending so much, so that we are now actually covering more of what we do with what we're currently being taxed on. So I didn't even want to get into that now, but here's my last piece, and then I'll open it up to you, is why does all of this matter, right? Like, okay, why don't we just keep spending and getting more fiscal debt, and who cares? Why does this matter, right? Well, I think there's a few effects that people need to realize when the national debt is rising. One, I think it actually hurts economic growth and development. So the longer this goes, the worse it will actually be for America as a country with our GDP. But at the same time, the worse it will be for America as our citizens if our money is now losing value, which is the second major point, is as you increase the monetary supply, the value of your monetary supply goes down. So now the US dollar is becoming worth less. And then there's a few other things. Eventually, if we ever do get to the point where we have to start cutting expenses, we're going to have to cut some pretty important ones to make any sort of a dent. So if we don't get it under control now, there are many, many important government programs that are important that might have to be sacrificed in order for us to get the spending under control. And no one wants to talk about this, but these are the types of things that create financial crises. And when that's the case, you don't want a financial crisis. I don't want it. You don't want it. No one wants it. And eventually, when the economy is doing things that aren't in alignment with fiscal responsibility, problems bubble up. And you might not always know exactly what those problems are until they show their head. But once you see what that financial problem is, 2008, the mortgage crisis, 2000, you're talking about the tech.com bubble, and you can go all the way back into history, they've always occurred because there was some non-appropriate actions that were being taken. And I think when you're in a position where you have $34 trillion of debt, I don't know what it is. I have some ideas, but I don't know exactly what it is. But I would venture to say something's being done wrong that could create a financial crisis. And that's not a good thing. We don't want that. So let's start getting back in line. So that's my little segment. I have some more thoughts, but why don't I kick it over to you? What do you think about it?
I think it's a lot of money. And the pessimist in me thinks it's like a person with like $500,000 in student loans is like, I'm never paying this back. You know, it seems almost insurmountable to pay back $34 trillion because aside from money, I don't know anything else that has the trillion word aside from it, you know, except maybe sand on earth. I don't know. But it's an incredible amount of money. I don't know how to fix it, because it would require not just raising a crazy amount of funds, but it would also imply that we stopped borrowing. I think, obviously one of the big issues that goes with it, at a certain point, you would think we're supposed to pay it back, you know, in theory. In theory, we're supposed to pay it back. We couldn't just possibly keep borrowing money, right? At a certain point, the lenders are going to be like, can I get some of that back? You know what I mean? And at a certain point, they also stop lending us money. At a certain point, they're like, all right, man, you haven't paid me in a while. You know, like that one friend, you know, that you're constantly being asked, hey, can I have some money for an Uber? Spot me for some money here. And all of a sudden, he owes you like $340. And you're thinking to yourself, is this guy going to pay me back? Or is he just going to keep asking me for bread? And then you go, hey, you know, I'm going to stop giving you money, man. I need you to pay me back. You know, how did they act? You know, and right now, America is that friend. We are just hoping they're not starting to be like, can I get some of this money back? Right? And then what happens if we can't pay it back? That's the big question. If we can't pay back $34 trillion, like if somebody wants it back tomorrow, you know, what do we do? You know, do we say like, I don't got it? Do we say like, I'm not paying it back? Do we say, okay, I'll pay you back. Can I borrow a little money? I'll pay you back. You know what I mean? Do we say, nah, I'm ready to die for this. Let's go to war. I was never going to pay it back. What do we say? Who has the answer?
Well, on that note, what we've been doing is they're like, hey, can you pay us? And we're like, oh, yeah, I got you. And they go print a little money. And then we go to our debtors and be like, here's your payment. Let me know the next time I owe you some more money. And we just keep printing it in the back office. And then we just keep paying it out. But when we print it in the back office, it's like, that's why it keeps growing. Because we keep borrowing and printing money to like borrow from ourselves, essentially. We're basically borrowing from ourselves.
And the more we print, we're like, hey, we can borrow a little more.
Yeah. And it's gotten so bad that I think that most people are like you said, we're never going to pay it back. So why even try? Yeah. And I think that's actually a problem, is that I think American psychology has gotten to the point of the amount of debt we have is so insurmountable. Who cares? Let's just keep going this direction and like run it through its course. But I think the end of that road is not where I'm looking to go. It's almost like if America wants to solve the debt problem, they have to be willing to have some harder conditions to live with to do what's right. And I don't think any American is willing to take that step. And I, more importantly, don't think any politician is actually willing to do that. You'll see a lot of politicians say they're going to get the debt under control, and then they get into office, and next thing you know, they're voting for another large government spending bill. It's like they'll talk the talk, but then they all want to get reelected because they're corrupt, and they're like, well, the only way I can get reelected is if I give my people what they want, and if I'm giving my people what they want, they'll vote me back in, and then we'll fix the debt problem down. That's someone else's problem. I got to stay in office. It's almost like you'd have to have a whole group of politicians willing to take the difficult step, which is figuring out how we're going to solve the debt, and then living with the fact that they're probably not going to get reelected for doing it.
The scary part about $34 trillion of debt, you know what the scary part of that is? I remember when I was in college. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Over 10 years. No, not over 10 years, but, good amount. Good amount of time has passed. I remember in one of my government classes, there was, I don't know who he was, but he was some special speaker. And it was like an election year. And he was like, guys, if the right person doesn't get elected, it's going to be up to your generation to fix the debt. And I remember thinking in a moment, damn, that's a big task. And it was like, I think it was like 15, 20 trillion dollars of debt.
It was in that range.
Something like that, right? And our generation, now we're hitting our 30s, and we're like, we ain't paying that back. What? Y'all made this huge debt problem, and with no path to fix it? No, I ain't paying that back. In a way, with what money? Whose money? The billionaires don't have trillions of dollars. Even if you put all the billionaires together, let's say you paid off the debt. Are you back at 5 trillion in 2 years?
I don't have this stat in front of me, but I would venture to say if you took every penny from every billionaire in America and took it all, every penny, it still wouldn't pay the debt. I don't think there's $35 trillion worth of billionaire wealth cumulative in America.
Yeah.
That number is so big. People don't realize $34 trillion is so much money. You take all the billionaires, all of it. We're not even putting a dent in that thing.
Yeah, like if they passed a law to put Bezos, Musk, Zuckerberg, the Koch brothers, the Walmart family, you put them all together, take all their wealth, the politicians the next day are going to be like, tax the millionaires.
I bet it's under 5 trillion. Everyone you just named, I bet that's under 5 trillion cumulative.
I don't know. We could ask our...
Eugene, can you Google world's richest people? America's richest people. America's richest billionaires. America's richest billionaires.
And what their... You might even be able to chat GPT it, but just what their cumulative net worth is.
Yeah, they'll list it out.
Yeah.
I have an idea for this. Let's take the top 10. It's going to take a second, but...
While we do that, can I go over some of my Let me go over why you're supposed to raise taxes according to, the reasons why when we put the country together, Constitution, founding fathers, all that stuff. The whole point of taxes was to pay the debts of the United States, which we can't do with the taxes that we currently have. Provide common defense and general welfare. That's understandable. Is it $35 trillion understandable? Arguably. Regulate commerce with foreign nations among several states and Indian tribes. To establish uniform of naturalization and laws on bankruptcy. To establish post offices and post roads. Interesting. To coin money and regulate it and provide the punishment of counterfeiting. To promote the progress of science and useful arts. Useful key word there. By securing limited times to author and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Right? This was, in theory, what taxes are for. We got a lot of shenanigans going on with this tax money. We passed an infrastructure bill a few years ago. I don't know if you saw this. Eugene can fact check me on it, but I saw that they only made like 8 electric chargers with all that money.
There's no way. No, I actually am almost sure that's wrong.
How upset would you be if you found that I was right? That'll be the second thing you check. But how upset would you be? Live reaction. All that money on that infrastructure bill. I think it was like $1 trillion. How sick would you be?
Well, I'd be more sick if you told me that there was less than 8 roads or bridges or actual infrastructure that wasn't done. I'm not against them including that in the bill somewhat, if that's part of infrastructure. But I think a big portion of what the average everyday American is looking for is making sure that the actual physical infrastructure in America is being maintained and upgraded. And if that's not happening, that's where I would be really upset. Though if money's being allocated for it, I would really want to see progress on the charging stations, without a doubt, if there's money being allocated there, and 8 wouldn't be acceptable. But more importantly, in terms of prioritization, I think you really need to be making sure that the infrastructure that everyday Americans are using is at a premium standard. We should all be seeing kind of our airports, our bridges, our roads, our public transportation, all of those things that Americans rely on. Now that needs to be, if we pass a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, I expect to see $1 trillion worth of infrastructure improvements. So that's where I would be more upset.
Mm-hmm. Do we have an update on the net worth?
Yeah, so according to Americans for Tax Fairness, they say that at the end of November 2023, the collective fortune of America's 741 billionaires has grown to 5.2 trillion.
5.2 trillion.
But on a different website, it's saying 5.5 trillion.
Okay, so let me get this straight.
You were pretty close.
I said 5. Close. I said 5. So we fact checked. We confirmed that if you took every penny from every billionaire in America, you would get $5.2 trillion. We have $34 trillion of debt. How is taxing them the solution? You can't just rest on that. You have to find a way to say we have to address the spending problem in America. When you have a system where the debt is growing $1 trillion every 100 days, and there's $5.2 trillion cumulatively for all the billionaires, that can't be the only solution. You have to find a way to get spending under control in America. If you don't, this just keeps growing, and there is an end point. I know we joked about it and said, oh, just keep borrowing until, someone makes a big deal out of it. But eventually you have to solve this. And again, I think that at a certain point, Americans have to say, we're willing to take some more tough conditions in certain parts of America to start fixing this. Otherwise, it doesn't stop. With no sacrifice comes no benefit, and it's not easy to get the spending under control in America, but it's necessary.
Yeah. I don't have that much more to add based off of this, but I totally see your point. I agree with you. Any solutions? You said you alluded to maybe some revenue making activities. We selling some American lemonade to pay back the debt, or what are you thinking?
So, I mean, again, if you're going to solve the national debt problem, there's only three options. You lower expenses, you raise taxes, or you raise income. Or revenue, I should say. And America's supposed to be based off of us getting its funds from the citizens to cover its expenses. That's like the theory behind it. Americans don't want to be taxed anymore. They don't. There's only so much you can tap on that. No matter what group you are, from the lower income groups all the way to the richest person in the world, no one wants to get taxed. Sure, there may be ways, and I think we talked about this, you have to make it more simple for Americans to file taxes in the first place, but sure, there may be ways that we can adjust the tax system, but I don't think taxing is the solution to the national debt problem. We have to start thinking about ways to actually stop raising the debt and then get to the point where America at one point has had a surplus of revenue before. There have been points in time where American revenue was higher than American spending. So again, I think the solution is we need to come to a consensus as to how are we going to reevaluate the government programs that we have in America and first and foremost make it more efficient. I think everyone can agree that before you start cutting a program and saying we're taking it out, you look at that thing with a magnifying glass and you say, where's the waste? Where's the fraud? Where's the abuse of funds going on here? Because it's happening. The government is not efficiently using its funds in America, and we all know it. No one looks at any single government agency and says they're doing an incredibly efficient job. No one says that. There's waste, and before you start talking about cutting whole programs, why don't we get our spending efficient? Like a business, every dollar should be getting us a return, whether it's a benefit to our citizens or it's a return on the growth and development of America. But if it's not doing one of those two things and efficiently, we got to start fixing it. You can't just keep running these programs the way they're running and then expecting us to start cutting our expenses. First and foremost, run it almost like a business. There's a lot of businesses in America that run more efficiently than our government. Now, I'm not saying the government is only a business, but it needs to act in a manner consistent with fiscal policy standards, and it's not. And it's because we have a lot of government agencies, very efficient, and we have a lot of politicians handing out money, and then they're like, oh, why does this keep happening? We talk about this all the time. Every year, the government, this is a cycle. If anyone who doesn't know this, this is how the government works. The government gets funded a certain amount of money. They don't use it for 3/4 of the year. And then they get to the last quarter of the year and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to spend all of our budget money because if we don't, they're going to cut our expenses for next year. So purely for the fact that they want the same money or more the following year, they find ways to spend money in the last quarter of the year when they're not working efficiently the first 3 quarters, or in some cases, it wasn't necessary. They may not have needed the funds, but the government operates on they never want to have less funds, so they'll find a space to use it for the sake of getting the same funds or asking for more. It's so inefficient. Anyone who knows how the government operates knows that's true, and it's not the way it should be done. And you know that's true too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. Listen, if they're given a budget of $100,000, right? You give a government program, contractor, anybody, you had $100K. They will then, like you said, 3 months of the year, 2 months of the year, they've spent like 60,000 of it. They got 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the case may be, and they all start being like, "Oh my gosh, we got to spend this money. We got to spend this money." It doesn't occur to them, maybe we don't need it. Maybe we can cut it. Nobody wants to cut the budget. All of the people who work in these agencies, it's like a code. It's a code. It's like, let's find ways to increase the budget. Let's ask for more money. If people in the government hear budget cuts, they're freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, the budget's cut. The budget's cut. But it's actually better for Americans, right? That means you're spending less money on things, right? If a business cuts their budget, investors will be like, oh wow, you're more efficient. You're cutting waste, right? Because they're saving money. But the government doesn't operate that way. And unfortunately for the taxpayers, this leads to crazy deficits. If you if it was more, well, here's the thing. There is transparency with the government, right? There's FOIA and things like that. But it's not like the average everyday American can go into the books and really understand the bullshit behind all the spending. It would take a forensic accountant to really be able to dive in there and also analyze the duties, responsibilities, and the actions of the government to realize how much bullshit is. And they know. They know. If they're real, they'll know. The politicians will put on an act, right? Because they're all friends. The government employee, the head of the government agencies and the politicians, they're buddies. They're all trying to get that churn going, Unfortunately, the churn talk is for a different day. But it's just consistently trying to find ways to add to the budget, which is unfortunately adding to the taxes of Americans. If you're not part of the government, you are in one way or another funding all of the bureaucracy.
You want a solution? I'll give you one solution. This is how we can wrap this topic up. Here's one practical solution for how to start addressing the national debt and getting our spending under control. The government should no longer say, if you used the full budget and asked for more and weren't operating efficiently, we're going to give it to you. Priority funding will be given to government agencies that can use their budget or less than their budget and get the job done. The most efficient government agencies get the front of the line for funding. Because as opposed to the current system where these people make up ways to spend all their budget at the end of the year so they get the same money next year, why don't we start rewarding and incentivizing government agencies that can figure out how to use their budget or less than their budget as efficiently as possible? If they can prove that, you are now at the front of the line for funding. And our least efficient government agencies have to start, if they want to get into the funding pool, they have to start showing their efficiencies. Stop funding the inefficient government agencies. They're not doing, I can guarantee you this, if they are not efficiently using their budget, they're not efficiently serving whatever part of the American system they're supposed to be serving. We should have some of the best government programs in the world. And no one looks at our government programs like they're elite. No one says our government programs are elite. Everyone complains. You go to the DMV, who here has been happy when they went to the DMV? Not me. The DMV is run inefficiently. I have friends who are military members who have an incredibly difficult time with the Department of Veteran Affairs and say that's not operating efficiently. I don't think the IRS is operating efficiently. Name another government program.
You caught me. You got me. I don't know. HUD?
You think the Department of...
No, I'm just naming it.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development is not operating efficiently in America.
Yeah.
Give me one government agency that's operating efficiently. I can name a bunch that aren't. Even, I would say, our military, which is a formidable force in the world, isn't efficiently operating. They know that there's some waste there. They're just really good compared to the other ones, but they could be more efficient too. No one is being lean on how they use their budget. They're all looking for more money.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I agree with that.
It's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Incentivize in some ways. How would we incentivize?
That's the problem.
That might be another topic for another day. We got to think of solutions. Okay. That was good. Good little venting section. All right. Well, let's do a little tax talk, a little more tax talk. The last time we talked about taxes, we discussed some of the crazy parts of the whole tax system. And it makes you think, right? It makes you think. It had us thinking. The founding fathers, right? They understood that taxes were necessary, but they also understood that taxes can be a burden and they can be unjust and not right. As a matter of fact, taxes is low-key what started the Revolutionary War. Now, when you think about it, how would the founding fathers look at the current tax system is something that we've been thinking about, right? We get taxed so much in America. The better you do in America, the more they take from you, right? We get taxed everywhere we turn. We get taxed in our income in most states. We get taxed when we buy something. We get taxed when we die. We get taxed. We get taxed if we go through certain roads, right? There are tolls you have to pay. I've heard that they're even thinking about taxing the air we breathe, right? There's been talks in the air about that. And it makes me think, is this what the founding fathers intended? There weren't these type of taxes going on. They weren't going on in their time, the founding fathers got so sick of taxes, they threw the tea of Britain into the ocean. They were like, yo, this tax is unbelievable. I'm throwing this in the ocean. They raided a ship, threw all the tea that came in into the ocean, and like, I ain't paying these taxes, and it that started with a lot of taxes that came from the Stamp Act. So that act was colonists on virtually every piece of paper that was printed on. From playing cards and business licenses to newspapers and legal documents, they had to pay taxes on it. They even went a step further, taxing essentials like paint, other paper, glass, lead, tea, the stuff that they used every day. And we get taxed every time we go to 7-Eleven to buy something. We get taxed when we go to CVS. You can't buy anything and now you're taxed. Sound familiar? It's a little concerning when you look back, right? Because when you're in the everyday motion of it, taxing is a normal thing. You never think twice when you pay for something and you pay an extra $2-3. Every purchase, you're paying extra $2-3, $10, $20, $30. The more you spend, the more they tax you. They got taxed on some paper, some documents, some glass, some lead, and they were throwing tea off of a ship. They got taxed off some paper, some stamps, and they're like, hell no, we're throwing this off the ship. Tea gone over the ocean. They can come over here if they want to see me about it. They were ready for that smoke. They were sick of it, right? And then in response, what did Britain do? I'll let you guys know. For those who don't know, some of you know the story, some of you don't know. In response, they imposed the intolerable acts. That's how it was described. The colonists were like, this is intolerable. This is ridiculous. I'll go over some. So the Boston Port Act. This act was the first of the intolerable acts. It was a direct response to the Boston Tea Party. It closed the port of Boston until the East India Company had repaid for the destroyed tea. This measure severely impacted the economy of Boston and created widespread hardship for the residents. That was the first one. Boston was sick. They were definitely sending letters across the colony like, this is some bullshit. Can you believe these guys? Can you believe these guys? Unbelievable. And then the Massachusetts Government Act, right? England was really coming for New England at this time. This act significantly altered the colonial government of Massachusetts. It placed restrictions on town meetings. Interesting, right? Essentially curtailing the ability of colonists to govern themselves locally. It gave more power to the royal governor and the British appointed council, diminishing the influence of the colonial assembly, right? They're like, y'all can't get together. And people in Boston are like, what the hell? What you mean? I can't get together with my friends. They're like, nah, can't do it. They're definitely writing more letters. They're like, this is intolerable. I can't deal with this. The Administration of Justice Act. This one's interesting. Also known as the Murder Act or the Impartial Administration of Justice Act. This law allowed British officials accused of capital crimes in the colonies to be tried in Britain rather than in the colonies where the alleged crimes occurred. This has been an affront to colonial legal rights and fueled fears of unfair treatment by British authorities. So they were sending people back to Britain to face crimes that they felt were unjust, you know? And this was alarming to the rest of the colonies. Like, well, this can happen in New England. This could happen here. This could happen in Virginia. This could happen in New Hampshire or whatever other colonies were going on, right? And then the Quartering Act. This one's interesting. The Quartering Act, I don't know if people really, like when I was a kid and I heard about the Quartering Act, I was like, oh, that's wild. Now that I'm an adult, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. The Quartering Act. This act required colonial governments to provide housing and provisions for British troops stationed in America. It allowed soldiers to be quartered in unoccupied buildings, including private homes if necessary. Colonists saw this as an intrusion on their privacy and a violation of their property rights. Where have you heard that before? It's pretty crazy, you know. And so all of these things kind of spurred some of the founding fathers and colonial people to kind of start talking and be like, we need to get together, you know. And they're thinking like, whoa, war? You know, that's kind of what they were thinking. They get together during the Second Virginia Convention in Richmond, Virginia, and there was a famous speech by Patrick Henry, right? Famous speech. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the most famous part of the speech is, give me liberty or give me death. You know, he was like, I'd rather die than pay these taxes. And we're over here like, here's some sales tax. Here's some income tax. Tax me when I die. You know, you want some estate tax? We can get some estate tax. What are the tax? As a matter of fact, Americans are like, can we add more taxes? You know, they were ready to die to not pay taxes, you know. And I by no means am saying get rid of all taxes, but it is interesting how things have changed. You know, at one point in time, the founding fathers were like, I'm ready to die for this. I'm so sick of these taxes. If Britain comes over here, I'm shooting them on sight. We got to put it all together. I'm sick of these taxes. I'm sick of their stupid ideas, their laws. It's an intrusion. I got to have their soldiers in my house? That's crazy. I'm not doing that. I'd rather go to war. I'd rather see them in the streets. It's an interesting topic, right? How would the founding fathers view the taxes today? I wouldn't say they'd be happy about the taxes. I wouldn't say I think of me and Patrick Henry, right? If he came into 2024 today and I was like, hey, you want to go to 7-Eleven and get some grub? And he's like, well, grub? And I'm like, come on, man. And then they're like, okay, this is $18, and I threw him a 20, and they're like, I need another dollar for the taxes. He'd be like, whoa, another dollar? And I'm like, yeah, sales tax. He's like, what? Didn't we get rid of the intolerable tax? Didn't we get rid of the intolerable acts? I'd be like, he kind of brought it back. He'd be like, hey, who did it? Did Britain? I'm like, no, we did it. He'd be like, why? They're like, we're stupid. We don't read history. We don't think about the fact that like y'all went to war over it. We were just like, let's do it again. I don't know. And they're like, y'all talking about it? I'm like, we're not talking about it. We're just like, it's just a thing. He's like, damn. There's income tax. Dude's like, y'all paying tax on income? I'm like, yeah. You don't want to know all the taxes. They also want to tax the ultra wealthy. For what? For being ultra wealthy. You know what I mean? Like, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. You know, we've changed as an American society. You know, I think one of the most interesting things about all this is that we're just so numb to how much we pay in taxes. You know, like people are more upset about billionaires not paying their fair share, quote unquote, their fair share. Like, who is to say what is a fair share anymore? They don't even think about how much taxes we pay on a daily basis. You know, it's interesting. It's interesting. And reading about it made me think, I don't know if the founding fathers would have gone for that. I don't know. What do you think? I'll give you a little story.
Definitely. It's very interesting to hear. I didn't know all of those punishments that Britain did to after the. Everyone knows the Boston Tea Party, but not everyone knows the blowback from it. But no, I think there's no way around it. Americans are tired of paying taxes. They are. They're. We have to make a decision, though. That's the thing. Are we a society that wants to continue to increase the taxes that we pay and then in tandem increase the government involvement in our lives and the programs they're running and how they're providing services to the American person? Or do we want to lower taxes and then lose some of those projects? But that's the only way this goes. There's only two options. You have to make a decision. Do you think that the government is the appropriate solution for certain things? And if so, then you need to fund those programs. Or is there a more efficient way to provide those services another way, and then we start cutting taxes? But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be like, hey, we have to cut taxes, but we want to increase these programs in America. Like, I think that you fall into one of two camps. You either think, I would say this is kind of how you see people and their thought processes. You either think, hey, we need the government doing more, and if you're saying that, then you should be saying, and I'm willing to contribute more taxes to get that. Or you say, hey, we think the government should do less, and I want to be taxed less because I think we're cutting down on what they're doing. But the problem is, America wants both. They want all of the things that the government provides them, and they want to not pay taxes. And you just have to decide. Every person has to really sit down and think about it and say which side you're on, but you have to accept the ramifications of both sides. If you cut your taxes, you get less from the government. If you increase the government's involvement, you need to pay more taxes. And which one do you fall in?
Does anybody feel like they're getting anything from the government with the amount of taxes we pay now?
That's like I said earlier. I don't think there's anything I can point to that the government provides me that I'm like, thank you for doing an incredible job on that.
Yeah, I feel like we're paying more in not just taxes, but the invisible tax of inflation.
Yep.
That I'm like, I feel like I get less, right? There's people arguably say, promote safety and welfare. I could say that like there's less safety and welfare lately for a variety of reasons. I could say there's also there's also more regulation. It's becoming harder and harder to have business and free speech and a bunch of things that the whole point of the paying these taxes on top of what they're supposed to promote, but our constitutional amendment rights. Sometimes it feels like some of that stuff is being not promoted by those in charge in the government. It's interesting. It's not good. Not good.
Yeah, it's not good. I would say that when you're deciding how to spend your money in the free market, you try to find the best business that offers whatever you're looking for. And you say, I'll Google these different businesses, and whoever does the best job for the best price and the best quality, that's who I want to use. The problem with the government is they take your money and they don't provide you alternative options. It's like, this is what we're giving you. We're the government. But at what point do we get to say, you're not giving the best of this? Why are you making this be something that we have to subscribe to? It's like, either make it better. If you're going to take my money, make it good. Or don't do it. Let someone else do it who's going to do it better. But it just is forced upon us. And it's like, I don't remember agreeing to half the things that it's like, okay, you take my tax dollars and you're saying the closest thing I can get to having any say in where those dollars get spent is voting in my elected officials, and then they need to make the decisions that are in alignment with me, and then hopefully those decisions actually do a good job with the agencies that the government uses to act those things out. Like, it's not working. It's not working. Regardless of what side you're on, I don't think anyone's saying, hey, my dollar is getting spent on all the things that are my priority, and even the dollars that are getting spent are the most efficient uses of them. They're just not doing a good job. Either fix it or stop taxing me so much on it. I'm tired of it. Give me efficient government programs, or lower them in terms of volume of what they do, and let me use my money to start paying for those things. Because it's like, I don't want to be funding inefficient government programs with my taxes. I'd rather keep it. If that's just me, call me crazy. I'd rather keep my money.
Yeah, me too. I think that's all I got for the tax talk founding father section. They'd rather die than pay taxes. Is what they kind of
They got fed up.
they got a little tired of it, man. They were like, I'm done with the shenanigans. They were all talking, sending letters. They were all like, man, this is some bullshit. We need to get together and talk about this. And then by the end of it, they were like, let's go to war. They're like, I'd rather go to war than pay these taxes.
I don't want to go to war. I'll say that.
No, I don't want to go to war either.
I just want my dollars.
I'm talking about what they wanted to do.
Yeah, the founding fathers were.
I just find it fascinating.
They were fed up.
We've changed.
We've changed. They would not. Yeah. Anyway, we've changed.
Anyways.
Last topic.
All right, last topic. Changes to the political system. Changes to the political system. Let's talk about it.
We're on a roll, baby.
We're on a roll. You want to go with your first one, or you want me to go?
You go. I just did a little.
Okay. So listen, here's my thought process. Athletes, when they finish a game, they have to do a post-game interview most of the time, right? They have to go after the game and be like, dropped 30 points, had 9 rebounds, but we lost the game because of X, Y, and Z. I have to be more committed on this. We have to do this as a team, yada, yada. Politicians should have to do the same thing for voting for something, right? I feel like. Because I feel like politicians are making huge decisions that affect everyone. And then the second they're done, they jump in their big SUV with their security team and they're out. They won't even comment. Reporters will be asking questions and they'll be like, I think it was a good idea. Bye. And that's it. My thought process is, I think everybody's sick of the lack of accountability with politicians in the way they're voting, right? A lot of people feel like their politicians may or may not even be representing their constituents in a manner that is satisfying to them. My thought process is, if you're a politician, after you vote, I think you should be going on some type of platform and taking questions, especially for bills that are vital and affect everybody, right? Bills get passed all the time that the American public is like, whoa, how did that get passed? Or bills that are very important to the American public don't get passed. And people are like, how did this not get passed? And people should be held accountable, not just the Speaker of the House or the head of a party, everybody. Like, why are some of these cheesy politicians, no-name people, just like not speaking on why they're voting against something they normally would publicly be for or against? I think they should be speaking after these votes and giving a step-by-step breakdown of why they are voting for or against or abstaining from voting. I think that's the type of accountability people want. People can't be wanting more accountability for LeBron James losing a game than a politician voting or not voting for something that affects the whole country, even the world. Now, just one thing I thought it'd be a good thing to change.
I agree. The only challenge with that? Americans have to care. Americans have to tune in and see what they're saying. I would argue most Americans, or a good portion of Americans, are too busy watching reality TV shows or mindless TV shows and not paying attention to what's going on. It'd be incredible if we could get that done, but it would be more incredible if Americans decided to actually pay attention to and have a stake in the process and say, here's our voice, not on a high level, but on an individual bill level. Make the bills clear, make the people understand what the bills are in it, and then make the politicians explain to their people why they voted the way they did. But the step one is accountability for Americans to actually care. And I don't think everyone's doing that right now. But it's an interesting idea. I agree.
Yeah. That was the idea I had. What's the next idea? Do you want to go over an idea or you want me to go over my next idea?
Well, either way.
Okay. You go ahead.
I kind of had a summary. I think that we all can agree things are wrong. The system has problems, right? So I was thinking and I said, what are the top 5 ways that I would fix the political system right now? First, I think most Americans would agree we need to start putting term limits on our Senate and our House of Delegates. It's not right. They go on for forever. They're corrupt. They stay in their positions until they're 95 years old when they can't even think anymore and they're still just wobbling around. And we're all like, what's going on here? Term limits. 2, going in tandem with that, I think we should impose a maximum age limit on our elected officials. We have the minimum. Let's put in the maximum. We all can agree that that's becoming a problem and these people are staying way too long. 3, we've talked about this before, but banning stock trading for our elected officials. They're getting rich and corrupt off insider trading. Ban the stock trading. 4, eliminate corporate donations to politicians. Cut it out. Shouldn't be happening. It needs to stop. And 5, your politicians' salary should be reflective of the average wage of wherever they represent. These people don't remember what it's like to be a real person in America. They're making all this money with their salary, they're on the hill, and then they're getting rich off their insider trading, and they forgot what it's like to be an average, everyday American. The struggles they're going through. They're voting on things, and they can't even relate to what the average American's going through. It needs to stop. And 6, bonus one, little bonus way to change it, is all of our elected officials should have to take a quiz on a constitution, and then the results are posted publicly to say, how well do our elected officials know what the Constitution of America is? If you don't know the Constitution, you shouldn't be an elected official. It should just not be allowed. America is run on the Constitution. If you don't know that thing inside and out, and you're failing on a quiz on it, let's see if people vote for you then. You might talk a good game on the campaign trail, but do you know how America's supposed to operate? Because that's what we need. It's some accountability.
If you fail, empty seat.
Yeah. Below 50%, automatic disqualification. Go study the Constitution and run again next term.
Yeah.
So those are my ideas. Any thoughts on those, or did you have a new one?
No, those are great. We've gone over those before, but I definitely, I resonate with them. The Congress banning Congress from stock trading. You don't want them to be rich, bro? What's wrong with you? What happened to capitalism? It's like, no. Okay. No, that's good. So here is my next idea. No, it's not even an idea, honestly. Honestly, it's some friendly advice to politicians, If you're a politician, here's some friendly advice. No one's perfect. No one is perfect. Admit when you're wrong. Here's my thought process, right? Everyone in the world has been wrong on something. So everybody's been wrong about something big. Everything's been wrong about something small. You know why some people don't respect certain politicians? Because they do stupid things and then never take accountability when their idea or the thing they voted for was wrong. They're just like, no, it's not because of this. It's not because of that. And like the Americans can see that you're wrong. The American can see your policy didn't work and it was a detriment, right? If you actually took accountability and said, you know what? That was a bad policy. Let's fix it. I think a lot of people would actually resonate with it. Explain your idea. I think it would be good to explain why you thought it would work and then explain why it didn't work in practice. And then you can bring a new solution. Just don't make the solution stupid. Make it something that will actually fix it. Because I think that's what happens with a lot of politicians nowadays. And that's what's created such a giant distrust. There's no level of accountability. I think everyone in general, when they hear someone apologize and say, you know what, my bad, I made a mistake, there's a level of respect that's actually gained when someone actually acknowledges a mistake or a wrong. And I think if more politicians did that, there would be a better trust, and people would actually be more open to galvanizing around somebody. Because at the end of the day, we're supposed to be getting to the right place. We're supposed to be making America better. I think politicians think, oh, if I admit I'm wrong, it's over for me. And I would argue to say it might actually strengthen your influence over your constituents or just the people of America in general. How many times have we seen an athlete miss a jump shot or make a wrong play or do something stupid, and then afterwards you're like, I made the wrong decision? Or even a coach, like, I made the wrong decision, I put in the wrong guy, somebody told me not to make this play, whatever, but they make the adjustment and do something different the next time, right? Or you can, even in business, right? There's CEOs who make certain initiatives that don't work out, and then they think to themselves, you know what, I'm going to apologize, I'm going to take accountability. And you would think, oh, the employees are going to freak out. No, they're like, hey, I respect that. He's just like me. He made a mistake and he changed his mind. And especially when he explains why he's changed his mind, people will empower you. Politicians should do the same thing, regardless of what political party, right? If you're on one political party and you have a certain idea and that idea is pushed and then it's obvious it's not working, it's okay to be like, you know what? This was a dumb idea. I apologize. This is why I came to that conclusion. These are the results. Let's go back to the drawing board, and this is how we can fix them. My mistake. I apologize. I will do better. People will galvanize around that. People love to see accountability, Obviously, there's going to be people who are out of their mind, crazy, delusional, who will hate you for taking accountability, but they're going to hate you regardless. They're going to hate you if you're successful as much as they're going to hate you if you're a disaster. So those people don't matter. There's no convincing those people. Just a thought.
I think accountability is always a good thing. Being humble enough to admit when you did wrong. The politicians don't do it very often, though.
Yeah, I know. I can't even think of one time they did it.
They'll die on the hill they were standing on before they'll actually just say, hey, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
They're the only group who never admits when they're wrong.
Yeah. We get so mad at so many different groups for being like, hey, you did this, you did that, you did that. And some people will say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. Never do you see a politician say it.
Yeah. You'll never see a politician be like, you know what? That was a stupid idea I had. I can't believe we were able to make it a law. Let's undo it. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah.
And we're saying no ideas were ever stupid in laws? Like, no, they were. Even after they're out of, the political scene, they never look back and be like, that was stupid.
Yeah.
We should undo that. Someone should work on undoing that. They never admit that.
Well, both sides are just so dug in on their ideologies that they're never going to change. When I think we should all be coming together and trying to find common ground and common ideas of how do we fix this thing, or there are clearly some things wrong in America. How do we start fixing this? It's just the left saying this, the right saying this, and they're just digging deeper and deeper into what they think is right, and there's no compromise anymore. There's no middle of the ground. There's no people saying, all right, well, I won't get everything I want, but you won't get everything you want. Let's actually be reasonable and moderate anymore. Now it's just, hey, I'm going to figure out and be as schemy as possible to get done what I want done, because that's the only way it can get done.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way in negotiations. I've never seen negotiations in any capacity where you can just strong arm the other group so much that you get everything you want. It's about making a deal, and I think that's why we have a two-party system. It's because neither side is 100% right. You need both perspectives, but you need both perspectives to be willing to make a compromise for what's best for the average American. As opposed to this group or this group, think about everyone. Stop thinking about your specific perspective and think about everyone. We have so many things in America where you're this side or that side, and it's split right down the middle, but that just means damn near 50% thinks the other way than you. You can't superimpose your ideologies on people because you feel like that's the way to do it. America's always been about compromise. It's about making sure that we're serving all Americans, not just a group of them. But Politicians aren't doing that. Politicians just want to be elected and get rich and get their bills passed by whoever's funding money behind them. They don't even care about Americans anymore.
Yeah.
Politicians could care less about how their policies impact Americans. It's just, does this donor support it, or is this going to get me reelected, or whatever. They're serving their own interests. We all know it. We all know it. And in the meantime, the American gets screwed over.
Yeah.
It's a damn shame.
Do better.
Do better. Come on.
Shout out, what's that dude's name? The guy who's always like, do better. The gym guy?
Oh, I don't know his
I
name.
forget his name. Joey Swole. That's who it is, right? I could be
I don't know
butchering
who it
that. It's all good. Well, we've gone over a lot of things today.
A lot of things tonight.
How you feeling? We wrapped up? You got anything else you want to blast off before I wrap this up?
Not for me. You got anything?
No, I don't think I have anything. Eugene, did you have anything?
Nope.
Okay, well, shout out to Pope.
All right, man.